Hi kids, good morning, good morning. It is great to be able to have kids church today. I'm looking forward to our lesson. As usual, a reminder to be saving your money for our mission jar to continue to be able to have that money to bring to church so we can send it off to Alan in the UK to use for his kids ministry there. Wasn't it so fun to get to see Alan last week and hear how he's doing and learn about what it means to be a missionary and just some of the fun things he gets to do for his job every day as he works in England to share Jesus with others. I really enjoyed that. Well, this week we are going to be getting back to our story on Esther. We took a couple weeks and we went over some Easter lessons and then we got to meet with Alan last week. So it's been a few weeks, so let's do a little review. And if you remember our special guest from the week that we had our last lesson on Esther, Daffodil is back. So he's excited to be here for our lesson 2, and I have some questions, and I'm hoping that he can help me answer the questions to help us get back on track with our story today. Okay, so last week we remember that the king of Persia, he made Esther his new queen. He had chosen Esther to be his new queen, and we know that God had a plan to make her queen long before he ever chose her to be queen, because God had big plans for Esther and how she was going to save God's people. An evil man named, does anybody remember the name of the evil man in our story? Do you remember? Oh, you do remember? Well, what is it? You don't want to say? Well, why not? Oh, you only want to whisper today? I guess he's just in a mood to whisper. So let's see. Can you help us out? Can you remind me of the name of the evil man from our story when we went over Esther last time? Oh, he remembers. His name was Haman. Did you guys remember his name? If you did, great job. Well, Haman was the evil man in our story last time who wanted to put out the decree to have all of the Jewish people killed. So God sent in Esther to be the queen to eventually be able to stop Haman. So let's go to our story today and see what happens next. Okay, so I've got our story here, and let's start going over it together. The Jews in Persia were in trouble. Do you guys remember why they were in big trouble? Remember that Haman did not like Mordecai at all, and Mordecai was Queen Esther's cousin, but he spent a lot of time in town, and he did not like Haman because he wouldn't worship Haman. He was only going to worship the one true God. So Haman put out a decree to have all of the Jewish people, including Mordecai, killed. And this was really, really bad for God's people. So Esther was queen, but she was also a Jew, but the king did not know she was a Jew, and Haman did not know she was a Jew. She really didn't share with anybody that she was a Jew. So she was going to try to help the Jewish people. Esther and her cousin Mordecai and the Jewish people fasted for 3 days. And on the 3rd day, Esther went to the king. The king was sitting on the throne. He saw Esther, and what do you guys think happened? Remember last time we talked about Esther was that if the king decided to put out his scepter, that meant you could come in. But if he didn't put out his scepter, it meant you were to be killed, because no one was supposed to come in to see the king unless they were invited. And Esther had not been invited. Oh no. I was just going to pretend like I was going to whisper today, but I can't just whisper today because now I'm feeling really, really nervous for Esther because she was not invited to come see the king, and I definitely know the rules that you have to be invited to come see the king, and now she's gone in uninvited. What if he doesn't hold out his scepter? Oh, well, Daffodil, that's a really good question, and we're getting ready to find out what happens next. Does the king hold out his scepter, or does he not hold out his scepter? What do you guys think he's going to do? Well, if you have heard this story before, then we know that the king does hold out his scepter. Thank goodness! I was so worried about Esther. I'm so glad he held out that scepter. Now I'm not so nervous anymore. Well, good. I'm glad you're not so nervous anymore, Daffodil. Well, Esther went to see the king. He was sitting on his throne, and he held out his scepter. Esther walked toward him and touched the tip of the scepter. And the king said, "What is it, Queen Esther? What do you want to ask me?" And he said, "I will give you anything you would like, up to half of the kingdom." Well, Esther said, "I would like to invite you and Haman to come to a feast today. I have made a special meal for you." So Haman and the king went to Esther's feast. And as they sat after eating, the king said, "Esther, what do you want? Queen Esther, what can I do for you?" "I will give you anything, up to half of the kingdom." Well, she thought about it, and she decided that she wanted to make one more meal for them. And so she said, "Please come to a feast again tomorrow, you and Haman." Oh goodness, now I'm kind of starting to feel nervous for Haman because Esther's a Jew and he wants to kill all the Jews, and he's coming into her house for dinner 2 nights in a row. And I don't know how this is going to go whenever Esther lets them know that she knows that he wants to kill all her people, and he's a very evil man. And so now I'm feeling kind of nervous about Haman. You're putting part of this story together pretty quickly, Daffodil. I'm feeling kind of nervous for Haman too, because he's an evil man and he's wanting to do some really bad things, and I think Esther's preparing to tell the king about it. Let's see what happens next. Well, they came back for dinner. The king agreed, and that night Haman went home and had gallows made where he planned to have Mordecai hung specifically. And Haman often saw Mordecai sitting outside of the palace, and Haman hated him. What's a gallows? Well, a gallows was like a really large pole that they were going to use to put Mordecai to death. That was the tool that they planned to use to have him die on. Oh man, that sounds really kind of scary. Well, it is kind of scary, and that was part of Esther's problem of why she needed to talk to the king, because these plans that Mordecai was planning were really, really evil. Well, the next day, Haman and the king went to Esther's feast. They sat down, and after eating, the king said, "What do you want, Queen Esther? I will give you anything, up to half of my kingdom." Esther spoke up. "There is a plan to kill me and my people." Oh my word, she did it! She said it! With Haman sitting right there, she told the king, and oh man, it's out now. What's gonna happen next? Talk about drama, drama, drama. Oh, I'm getting nervous. I'm really wondering what the king's gonna do, because Esther's his wife, and she just found out that Haman wants to kill her. You're right, Daffodil. It's getting pretty dramatic in here. The king just found out that Haman wants to kill Queen Esther, and she is his wife. I have a feeling he is not going to like that very much. Well, the king replied and said, "Who is responsible for this plan?" "The evil enemy, Haman," Esther said. What did Haman do? Oh man, I bet Haman got scared now. Not so big and bad after all, I wouldn't mind saying so myself. Yes, Daffodil, it's true. I bet he's not feeling so big and strong and powerful anymore with the king sitting right there, hearing his evil plan that was going to affect not just all of the Jewish people, but his wife, who was also a Jew. The king became very angry, very angry. He actually ordered for Haman to be hung on that gallows and put to death, and not Mordecai, and that the Jews should not be killed. He made a law to keep the Jewish people safe from their enemies. Well, thank goodness. I really didn't know how things were going to go for Esther when she went in to see the king without permission, but God took care of that. And then I kind of was wondering what was going to happen to Haman whenever I knew Esther was probably going to tell the king. And when she did, oh man, I bet the king was mad, mad, mad. And he took care of business and put that evil man just out of here. Just took care of him. Yes, he did. He actually did more than just take care of him. He completely put him to death and punished him for his evil, evil plan. So as I think of Esther and her story and how God used her, I think of what incredible courage Esther had as she approached the king on behalf of her people and how she could have been killed. But God used Esther at just the right time to save his people. I find it so amazing that God uses ordinary people, just everyday people, to accomplish his plan. Esther may have been a queen, but she didn't start out that way. Esther at one time was just a girl who was willing to let God use her for his purpose. And that's exactly what God did. That is pretty neat. I hadn't really thought about it that way. I know it is pretty neat to think about her courage and how God used her and how God was in control the entire time. God can use me and he can use you and he can use your parents. He can use every single person, just ordinary people in mighty, mighty ways. And that is so wonderful to know that God is always in control. Satan wanted to destroy believers too, but God had a bigger plan. He sent Jesus. And I'm sure when Jesus died on that cross that Satan thought he had won, but God had a much bigger plan, and he had Jesus raised from the dead and conquered death, and then was able to offer us eternal life when we simply believe in him. So even though sometimes things can seem scary and out of control, we can trust and always know that God is always in control and always has a plan. And also know that God can use you to do really big things, even if you're just thinking, well, I'm just a little boy or I'm just a little girl. You may be, but God may use you for something special and big one day because he always has a great plan and is always in control of all things. Kids, I had a great time learning about the rest of our story for Esther today. I'm glad you joined us today, Daffodil. Thanks for having me. Bye, boys and girls. I'm glad you came. It was great having you again. So guys, I hope you have a great week this week. I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Daffodil, I'm going to say goodbye to you and we'll see you later. I wanted to let you guys know that I took a little piece of gold foil border liner that I had, and I made myself a little crown to remind me of Esther and her bravery and her story and how God used her and how God always has a plan and a purpose for our lives, and that all things work together for good. And so I just want to see your guys' crowns. Can you find some things in your house? Maybe you can find a paper and color on it or draw a crown, and you can tape it together in some way and put it on your head. So you could send me a picture or email me a picture or text me a picture if you have my phone number. I would love to just see if you had time to make a crown today and how they turned out. And I hope you had fun learning about Esther today. Bye, guys.